Afternoon, everyone. My name is Tombo Banda. I am a managing director at Cross Boundary. At Cross Boundary, our purpose is to drive investment in frontier and emerging markets for a sustainable and strong return. I am excited to be on this panel because I'm leading efforts in the EV space to drive investment in EV infrastructure downstream for electric two-wheelers. So we are working with operators to finance batteries, charging infrastructure, and provide renewable energy solutions to help scale the sector. So yeah, very excited to be here and talk to you all. Pass on to you.
Thank you. I'm Kyriakos Kofinas. I'm the managing partner of AIMS International Gulf, which is an executive search company in the Gulf. I'm a member of the Middle East and Africa AIMS International executive search teams. So we recruit the right talent, actually, to start up and penetrate new industry sectors, one of which can be mobility in Africa. And this is actually the topic which I will cover today, because I have also consulting expertise on e-mobility for the world, but also for Africa.
So my name is Sten. I'm the CEO and co-founder of EB Africa. EB is an e-mobility company focused on electric bicycles. We started our business in 2022. We're now operational in Kenya, in Uganda, and Rwanda. We see e-mobility not so much as our end game, but as a means to create jobs for youth and women, and of course contribute to cleaner, less polluted and less carbonized cities.
And I'm Simon. Simon Davis, founder and CEO of Ox Delivers. Ox is a trade tech business selling infrastructure as a service. What we help our clients do is help them get paid, something we all like to happen at the end of the month. But for many of our clients who've grown something or made something, they need to get their goods to their customers and then get delivered. And we do that through two things. One is a purpose-designed electric truck. First truck designed for dirt road transportation for 40 odd years, and certainly the first EV one, and then a digital platform which enables us to connect our clients and then to book space on our trucks.
Thank you very much. So we have a very learned panel today, especially with regards to, I see that it's a bit skewed towards, electric bicycles, e-mobility, but I believe this is the way forward with regards to Africa, African cities, etc. So as we all know, so we've been listening to quite some brilliant speakers before in terms of what is happening in Africa with regards to infrastructure development, etc. So we all know about infrastructure, how Africa needs, the demand supply on the one side, the supply on the other side, and the need, for African cities to rise to the next level, especially with Africa being home to so many resources and so many potential in terms of the youth that they have, in store. So maybe I'll start with the first questions. I have a series of questions which I would like to ask, but it's really unfortunate that, Yorks, CEO of eBikes Africa, could not make it, but so next time maybe. So, but still, maybe I'll start with Sten. So Sten, maybe I'll jump straight to the question. Why do you think we need electric bicycles in Africa? Why bicycles? Africa is too big. It's a big, very big continent, home to 56 countries. All right, distances. But first place, why do we need bicycles? And why do we need electric bicycles in Africa?
Yeah.
Simple question.
Yeah, there's many reasons why we believe that there need to be electric bicycles in Africa. When you look back at the 70s and the 80s, Africa and especially the cities were full of electric bicycles, the black Bambas, and they have been all pushed out by motorbikes. And motorbikes, of course, especially the ICE motorbikes, they're polluting the cities. But also they're very expensive to operate. When you think about it, delivering a pizza from a restaurant to a customer over 2 kilometers, a motorbike has never been designed for that. So when you look at the total cost to operate of electric bicycles, it's 2.5 times more affordable, which means that the rider earns much more money when they switch from a motorbike to an electric bicycle. And on top of that, he contributes to a cleaner environment. What we also see is in the countryside, of course, means of transport is limited to motorbikes, bodas, or walking. And especially women are highly dependent on men for mobility. So when I'm in the countryside, I always see women waiting alongside the roads, being picked up by either a motorbike or a matatu. And we believe that an electric bicycle could change and could transform lots of these mobility needs, especially for women, and make them more independent because of an electric bicycle. So electric bicycle brings you further than a normal bicycle in the same amount of time, and that's a huge advantage. And then the other reason why I believe electric bicycles should play a big role is the accessibility. Especially when we work together with microfinance companies, we could bring the cost of an electric bicycle down to roughly, in Kenya for example, 350 shilling. We see that most of our delivery riders could earn up to 1,500, 2,000 shilling a day, so it makes the part of their mobility much smaller. And then the other part, because last mile deliveries is one part of our business, the other part is commute. When you think about how much money people spend daily on commuting and how much time, you could easily swap that also for an affordable daily rate for an electric bicycle. And then after 18 months, you own the electric bicycle and you don't spend any money on your commute anymore. And of course, there is some support needed from an infrastructure perspective. Sure. Because the roads could be much safer than they are today.
Yeah, I just want to stop you. I want to ask a question because you touched on a very sensitive subject. So you were telling that, of course, in so far gender is concerned, so women need to be fending off for themselves. They need to be, independent. So I would like to ask the question because you said that, now women can ride electric bicycles, etc. So you're not telling them they can't ride motorcycles or motorbikes, but I would like to ask this question to Tombo. So how is it in Africa? How do we see it? So are women ready to take the ride? Yeah?
Oh no, I'm getting the gender question because I'm the only woman on the panel. Damn. Anyway, well, look, from my perspective, we are working with electric two-wheelers primarily. We see that as a growing market. It's a huge market across the continent with huge potential for impact. Today we have 1.6 million motorcycles in Kenya alone. 70% of those are bodabodas. So they're doing a lot of the jobs that you talked about in terms of doing deliveries. But there's some things that bicycles can do. There's some things that motorcycles can do. And on the continent, people put a sofa on a motorcycle, right? You can't put that on a bicycle. So there's a growing market, and 5 million vehicles are expected to be electric on the continent by 2040, and that represents a huge potential impact, not only in terms of jobs, in terms of emissions reductions, but it's a huge business opportunity for even those riders who are now saving money because they are powered by electricity rather than fossil fuels. For the economy, because the balance of payments can be reduced if you are an oil importing nation, and then there's the emissions factor, right? So there's a lot of potential to be gained. As well, the batteries that we are financing are LFP batteries. A lot of the components come from right underneath the ground, right? So there's a lot of potential on the manufacturing side, on the repurposing side. It's a huge, huge, huge potential that's going to explode in the next few years. So I'm very excited about that, women or men.
It's really a coincidence when I was requested to moderate this panel. It's something something which goes back in the past. My mother, I'm from Mauritius, small island, far from 4 hours flight from Africa, from Johannesburg. So my mother, they were like 10, some, I don't know, 50, 60 years, 70 years ago. So she was like 9 years old. Now she's 80. So she was the only girl in that village where she lived, where she had 6 brothers and 3 sisters. She was riding a bicycle because my grandfather was very, illuminating in the sense that she wanted her girls to thrive and then to be pilots, But my mother is quite known. My mother was the only, girl at that point in time riding bicycle. Why? To give, food to his dad who was like working somewhere. So just a short anecdote just to, yeah. So maybe I'll just, because you've spoken a bit about, you know, the cleanliness of the energy use, etc. So there is a question mark in the sense that, so what sort of energy? Are you using coal? Are you burning coal in order to, you know, provide for? So maybe I would ask the question to Kyriakos. So what are the challenges, you know? What are the opportunities that you see could accelerate this e-mobility in Africa? But before responding to that, so what about, you know, this strain on natural resources in order to get there? So what's your take on that? We've discussed a bit before the panel, you know, the other day on Zoom, etc. So I want to have your gauge on that, please.
Well, it is clear that immobility has started everyone around the globe. I mean, we experience this nowadays. We are here in London with electric vehicles and the chargers, but not in Africa yet. And when you talk with e-mobility experts about Africa, they believe that Africa is an indispensable opportunity because they try to minimize maybe and overcome the challenges that exist in Africa. For example, of course, the first one is the per capita income, which cannot afford, you know, buying yet the electric vehicles, which are still expensive globally, not only for Africa. The access to the electricity and to reliable electricity, the level of the motorization, which is lower in Africa compared to the rest of the world, and also the high dependency, which I'm sure we all experience in Africa, on second-hand cars, which basically are not existing for electric vehicles. But at the same time, I think these challenges are equal or even can be overcome by the opportunities. And starting first with, as you said before, the vast potential of renewable energy sources in Africa, which is very characteristic in Africa. Some decentralized electrical solutions or societies that exist in Africa, which can allow like micromobility, but also in small cities or small areas, to start with some implementation of e-mobility, and which makes also electricity more, I would say, affordable than the fossil fuels. The other thing which I think is also important for that is that e-mobility can answer some socio-environmental and economical challenges of Africa. And I would just like to mention two of them. The first one is e-mobility can reduce the atmospheric pollution related to transportation and extend the life expectancy. It is estimated that the vehicle pollution in Africa is increasing every year 7 to 10%, and it is becoming practically the fourth reason of a lower life expectancy and the second reason of deaths. Approximately 200,000 deaths are related to pollution of vehicles. So this is a strong driver why sometime the mobility should start. And then the second also opportunity there is the capacity and the heritage Africa has with manufacturing and assembling cars in the mobility in general. And because electric vehicles are considered to be far more simpler in manufacturing and in assembling, it can be an opportunity for Africa to become a destination for assembling electric vehicles, which need less parts, less time, and of course specific expertise this to be happen. So imagine that we can start assemble electric vehicles, affordable or micromobility, and I'm sure that you will describe this opportunity as well, in Africa, and having both the know-how, lower prices for the locals, and of course the capability to maintain it. Also will allow to localize the electric vehicles because Africa has a different climate conditions, so they need to tropicalize basically the cars to have different batteries, different suspensions, different capacity of carrying, because the conditions are different in Africa. So for all this, of course, we always need the right expertise, the right talent to have the experience how to do it differently in Africa.
So thank you, Kyriakos. So quite a number of opportunities, but also quite a number of challenges. So I would like now to turn to Simon. So Simon, you have quite some experience from discussions that we've had, so in Africa, especially in Rwanda. So you've been serving like, I don't know, 4,000, 5,000 businesses throughout in Rwanda. So maybe before entering into the direct question with regards to e-mobility, etc. So what sort of problem, in a generic manner, are these businesses facing? And then we can, pursue our course towards, the infrastructure problem.
Yeah.
Please.
I guess the fundamental problem, which is a problem many businesses face, is getting paid, right? There's, look at some of our clients. We have a great chili pepper client who's called Jean-Pierre, and his journey, he grows chili peppers, his journey to get paid for his chili peppers involved putting them on a bicycle and pushing, and it wasn't an electric bike, and this is in Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills, getting to the local town, waiting for the bus, putting them on top of the bus, sitting in the bus all day to get to Kigali, then taking them off the bus, and then getting a moto, and putting them on the moto and taking them to DP World and selling them. And he was doing this to sell 600 to 800 kilos of chili peppers every month. Now, that's an extraordinary amount of effort and an extraordinary amount of time. He's spending 20% of his time traveling just to get paid. Now with Ox, he picks up the phone, books space on the truck, and he is sending 8 tons of chili peppers to market. And so every month. So it just shows the potential. We talk a lot about waste, and food waste gets talked a lot about in the market, but actually there's a huge amount of opportunity that just goes unplanted, that goes undone, because people cannot see access to the market because transport is so expensive. And so the opportunity with e-mobility is to really change that game, to make transport 10 times cheaper than it has been today, and therefore to connect people up, and then that drives prosperous businesses. Because ultimately, whatever you grow, whatever you make, it's when you deliver it that you get paid.
Okay, thank you. So, Stan, do you agree to what the challenges that have been put forward by Kyriakos? Do you have other points that you would like to add, with regards to those barriers, challenges, with regards to Africa?
Yes, I think a lot of things have been mentioned, but keeping e-mobility and making e-mobility affordable, I think is quite a challenge. We really need support from the governments to do so. You see, for example, in Kenya, where in 2023 they decided to not put VAT on e-mobility. That really helped to keep the prices down. But then the next finance bill, there was again discussion, also pressure being put from the traditional industry on those benefits. So we need to have a long-term vision on benefits for EVs, bringing the prices down, because the purchase price of an EV in general is higher than an ICE vehicle. And of course, when you look at the cost to operate, you're much more affordable. So we need to help people to get over that hurdle, but also educate people what the benefits of EVs are. And then on the other side, we also need finance institutions to help customers to make it affordable when they purchase. And there you also see that especially, of course, the big MFIs have now started to offer e-mobility, like, for example, M-Kopa, Mogo, Watu, the big ones, B-Box. But it's now also up to the banks. And I know banks get support, for example, from the European Investment Bank for green investments, green loans. But you see that banks take a lot of time to make the changes in their processes to also start offering loans for e-mobility. So yeah, we need to make sure e-mobility remains affordable. And that's, of course, always a bit my pitch for electric bicycles. Because what we always say is we democratize e-mobility. E-mobility should not be seen as a Tesla, like how it was launched in Europe and the US. E-mobility should be seen as something which is affordable, accessible, and of course creates much cleaner cities.
Okay. So I'm just thinking one thing which is pricking my mind. I'm just thinking of Africa as a whole. We've home to so many resources. The bicycles are needed in Africa, the problems are in Africa, the barriers are here or there. But, there seems to be a disconnect with the way that, things need to be rolled out in order for all these to happen. You, of course, you hail from outside of Africa, but you bring the knowledge. This is very good. but the resources are there. So how to plow these resources? So Africans have to do their own homework. They have to, integrate. So I would like to pose that question with regards to regional integration to Tombo, with regards to the FTA, so African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which has to do somehow with enhancing integration in Africa. So I know that you've been quite, I would say, close to that. If you can share with us, your experience and the way that you see this rolling forward, notwithstanding the fact that so many problems with regards to African countries, with regards to politics, social, and others which I would not name, but please,
Sure.
I'd like to listen to you.
Yes, I'm not an expert by any means, but I can lend my view. I think from a regional development perspective, the Africa Free Trade Agreement coming into effect is going to have a very significant impact because when it comes to developing, large mega investments, if you want to build batteries, if you want to have bigger mining investments for these materials, you need to ensure that you have the market to absorb them. And on a country-by-country basis, that doesn't make sense, right? But if you look on a regional lens, then that investment starts to make sense. So we can expect that will help to accelerate the process. And I think that's more of a long-term play. I think in the medium term, on the motorcycle side of electric mobility, not as relevant, but I think when you start looking at, trucks, buses, there needs to be, regional investment into charging stations along the routes to make it make sense. So I think, once these frameworks come into play, it makes it that much easier to facilitate these investments and then accelerate uptake because suddenly the market is so big and it makes it make sense for investors.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll touch on something very peculiar, which you've just stated about, we talked about resources, we've talked about the challenges, the opportunities, but of course, finally it boils down to how do we finance all this? So I would like to have from each one of you, your take, be it from a layman's side, if you're not versed in finance, but so what's the way forward? What do you think, not only DFIs or not only at the state level, but how do we need to do things in order to have those vital, crucial financing pipelines in order to fuel those projects, not only in electric bicycles, e-mobility, maybe in others also. But the problem with not only Africa elsewhere, but especially with regards to Africa, is it boils down always to finding the right source of finance, the right size. So I would like to have maybe one sentence, anything from you, just for the sake of the audience, with regards to this particular problem that everybody faces. Please. I'll start with Simon, and then we can move on.
I think the key thing to remember is that whenever you have new technology, it requires new business models, right? When we made the transition in the UK from landlines to mobile phones, it wasn't until you bundled phones and the rental together that it made any sense and it started to grow. You referenced Tesla. Tesla has a different business model, direct-to-consumer sales. They approach their business very differently from the conventional OEMs. And many of the e-mobility people in the West, in the SPAC era, kind of screwed up, in my opinion, because they tried to just take new technology and play in existing markets with the same structures, and it doesn't work. And for us, that is about, we don't build we build vehicles, but we don't build them to sell. We build them to sell space on them. And that completely changes how you think about the vehicle, because I don't ever want to scrap a vehicle, whereas most people who make vehicles want to sell you another one in 3 or 4 years' time. So new technology means new business models. That's sometimes a little bit difficult for financial institutions to get their head around. Like, is this new business model the right one or not?
Yeah, and linked to that is speed.
Okay.
I think the technology develops faster than the financing part of it.
Yeah.
And that really delays opportunities in the market, but also opportunities to create impact. What we see in general, the speed of financing, I already mentioned the banks, for example, but even MFIs and of course the whole ecosystem behind that. It takes too much time to change and to develop finance structures for those new business models.
Yeah, it's always like this with finance. I think engineers think more rapidly.
Need more engineers in finance then, right?
Yeah, sure. Kyriakos.
Well, I think the first thing is you need to have the right people, because you need to have people who have not only the expertise, but have the experience of having done that in a similar situation. Now, what is similar to Africa? I mean, we are in AFSIC International, we try to connect 70 countries to find who has done this in another, for example, in the less developed European country, in the less developed Asian country. And this is really how we help find the right level of experience, which is very important to kick off. The second is you need to find the right partners. And for example, for e-mobility, because there is this interest for electric vehicles and the capacity of Africa, you have already Chinese companies like BYD or like Dongfeng who have signed memorandum of understanding with Morocco, with Egypt. So you need to have the right partners because this helps. And then you go to the third, which is getting the financing from the banks. But there's also another element in e-mobility is that these new type of activities are also highly digitalized. And as you said before, the innovation that comes in this activity is really so fast to follow, but also makes that much more easier to implement in a smaller scale. So you rather start with a small scale, like with a micro-mobility exercise, like you are doing in Uganda, which I think is a much more affordable, and then you grow up. But you need to start small in order to get the finance.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Tombo.
I'll just add to what the panelists have already said. I think they've pretty much wrapped it up, but I think I'll agree most with Simon, like the new business models. I think that's what we're trying to implement as cross-boundary as we work with operators, try to figure out, how do we solve their financing issues at the tail end of the value chain where they have, high CapEx needs and they're not used to raising, money for infrastructure, right? How can we support that? And figuring out innovative ways to do that. And we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. We can look to Asia and other markets that have been doing similar things and adapt them for our local contexts. So I think in summary, I would say that new business model, not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but just tweaking and being innovative and nimble will support the sector to scale.
Yeah. I just want to share something with you with regard, but of course I'll ask you, of course, to comment on that. I live in an island, mountainous island, small island, Mauritius, when I was like, a teenager, we used to take our bikes, go to the beach, and going to the beach from where we stayed, it was like, going downhill. But when coming back, we had to hire, like a truck would take us because it was so difficult just to, riding the bicycle uphill. So in Africa, from where you have been, from where you are, so does this pose a problems in terms of the flatness of the roads, the lands, etc.? Because I know there are some countries in Africa, quite a lot of countries, with quite some very flat topography. So what's your views about that? It's a very simple problem, but it's a very practical issue also. I would like to have your views on that, especially with regards to e-bicycles, which aids a lot in that. Please.
Yeah, so happy to talk about it from our perspective. In the end, it's a combination of the power of the motor and the capacity of the battery. So our bicycles operate in Kigali and they operate in Kampala. They cope with the hills because we've made bicycles specifically for those countries and for those cities. So the terrain doesn't matter, if you look at Switzerland, people could use also e-mountain bikes to go up the hill. So these vehicles are very powerful and very capable of riding on any terrain, I would say.
From a truck point of view, hills are quite good, right? Because the great thing about an EV truck is that you recuperate energy when you go downhill. So when you go up a hill, you use energy and then it gives it back to you. So it's quite possible to drive in Rwanda for 20, 30 kilometers and never use any energy at all. In fact, it gives you energy back. And then you can conversely in 5Ks use a large amount of energy. So hills aren't a problem. It's generally speed and aero. That's what wastes energy when you drive a vehicle is the wind.
Thank you. Very good. Maybe from you, Tombo and Kyriakos, briefly.
Well, I agree with the others. I mean, in e-mobility, you have always consuming and regenerating powers. So whenever you have uphill, you have downhill. So, and also, I totally agree that starting with mountain bikes and electric mountain bikes, which are also very highly selected in Europe. So a big share actually of electric bicycles are mountain bikes. I think this is a very nice introductory experience to electrification of the mobility. And this is not only in Africa, this is everywhere around the world. They started with a much higher penetration of electric bicycles compared to electric vehicles. And this is everywhere the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And I think on my side, the operators that we work with actually have bespoke motorcycles that they've built for the terrain that they operate in. And I think this is really important. So you can't just have any old motorcycle imported from India or China for the roads of Kenya, of Uganda, of other African countries. There's different needs. There's potholes, which might be more harmful than a hill. So they have to take on different terrain. They have to accommodate different loads. And we see operators responding to that by custom designing bikes, batteries to fulfill those requirements.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add to this. This is a term which is called tropicalization in e-mobility, which is adjusting the vehicles or the micromobility to the tropical environment, which has to do with batteries, with suspension, with capacity, with modularity. So Africa is the reason why they have started designing this.
Okay, so we can hope, Sarah, for next time, can have some electric bikes at the airport. I'll come straight to AFSIC. That would be nice.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I would like to open the floor for a few questions from our audience. So happy to take on your questions, please.
Someone must have a question. You can ask us what we had for breakfast. What did you have for breakfast then?
I had Greek yogurt for breakfast.
Oh, Greek yogurt. There you go, in London having Greek yogurt.
Exactly. It's the only place to get it.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just interested, just a very quick question as a bike rider myself, and knowing the difference between having to pedal and the joy of riding an e-bike, but can't afford an e-bike because they're very expensive. Just an interesting. Why do people invest in e-bikes over leg power? Because they're relatively shorter distance. I'm just.
Yeah, especially when you are in last mile deliveries, you can do many more deliveries during a day than on a normal bicycle, and it doesn't tire you. So people like our riders, they're not athletes. They work 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, and they can continue doing that because they get the support from the battery in the motor.
And how are the batteries recharged? Are they solar recharged?
So no, the big benefit of electric bicycles is that the battery is very small but very powerful. So it has a range of 80 kilometers, but you can charge it at any socket in 4 to 6 hours. It's full again. So most of the riders take the bike home, they charge it overnight, and then the next day they continue working. They do between 50, 60 kilometers a day. So 80 kilometers is enough for them.
Fantastic. I don't think anyone's anti these e-vehicles. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Has anyone else got any more questions for our panel? Ollie, you've got a question.
Sorry, Sten. I just wanted to ask, what would you guys be implementing to combat potential theft of e-bikes in Africa? I mean, cables are stolen sometimes from wire boxes. What would you guys implement to prevent the theft of e-bikes or things being taken off them?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things we do. So of course we provide a chain lock with every bike, so that we recommend people who buy the bike from us to use the chain lock to lock it to a fixed location. But on top of that, we developed batteries which are connected. And that is already standard, more or less, in the e-motorbike space, especially when you move to swapping. In electric bicycles, this is non-existent. Nowhere in the world you can buy a battery for an electric bicycle which is connected, because the battery is so small. So we managed to find an engineering company who designed this for us. So our bicycles have batteries with integrated SIM card, GPS, and it's all linked to the battery management system, which means that we are able from a distance to lock the bike, to track the bike. So we have a big fleet operation in Nairobi, more than 350 riders who are employed by us. And we are capable of retrieving bikes which are stolen. We work together with a security company, so the moment we get an alert, we know exactly where to go, and we have a very good track record in getting these bikes back.
Can we have your good name, please?
Oliver.
From?
South Africa.
Nice, thank you. There was a lady waving her hand at the back.
I think that's me. I've got the microphone anyway.
You're from?
Lindsay Northover, UK Parliament, House of Lords. There's a private member's bill going through the Lords at the moment on lithium batteries and the disposal of them. And obviously, the disposal of these batteries has become a key concern, and the use of ones which aren't as safe as they might be, and fires starting, etc., etc. And obviously there's also lots of stuff on social media in relation to EVs and trying to dissuade people from buying EVs on the basis of their risk. Is that something that you're encountering in your sales, and how are you countering it?
Very good question.
I think there's a lot of misinformation. Like, it's 10 times more likely for your ICE, your diesel or your petrol vehicle to go up in smoke than your EV does. The EV might be a little bit more impressive, but it's much less likely to catch fire. And I think, particularly speaking personal experience in the UK, there's a lot of very dodgy batteries being brought in with no thinking. What's I think interesting about what we're doing is both myself and Sten, from an operation point, we're interested in the utility of the vehicles and therefore the life of the vehicle, and therefore the investment goes in to making sure those vehicles last a long time. We are not in the product business, whereas what you find in the UK and the delivery riders bombing around is you've got companies that are just in the product business. How do I sell a powerful e-bike that someone will buy over the internet and get delivered to the house? Got absolutely no interest in the performance of that vehicle after a week or two. As soon as you get a warranty, whereas we don't ever want to take a vehicle off the road. You look at the data from the early Teslas, people are doing 1 million miles in Teslas, and they've changed one set of brake pads and fixed something that fell off it, right? If you look at an ICE vehicle, every day, every minute you're putting air into it, every few days you put petrol into it or diesel, every few months you put oil into it. All of those are opportunities to introduce contamination into the vehicle. And it also catches fire inside all the time, and that creates a lot of wear, lots of mess, a lot of it. It's very difficult. When you connect something, it's effectively solid state, right? You're putting electrons into a car, and there's no such thing as a dirty electron. So if you manage the engineering properly and you have the right mentality, then it's fires are not an issue.
Yeah, but I share your concern, because if there are no standards in a country in Africa, then anybody could import the cheap batteries, and you get all these problems. So we have a very strong view on quality. So when you look at our bicycles, we use the European standards for everything, although there are no standards in the countries we operate. And the same applies to the batteries. And on top of that, there's new legislation in Europe that the manufacturers are now obliged to repair the batteries. That's already implemented by us, so we are able to repair our batteries. We have designed the battery in such a way that we can change cells, we can repurpose the cells for solar storage. So there's lots of thinking from a sustainability perspective gone into the design of the battery. But for me, it's really important to get those standards, So we work together with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, for example. We are in their technical commission to really drive the speed for quick standards so that there is a level playing field for everybody. Because I already see that, you know, if you're the first to introduce electric bicycles, then of course when you have lots of them on the road, competition will be present, which is good. But then you need to play along the same kind of rules. So there needs to be level playing field, and safety is a extremely important feature. Yeah.
And
Okay.
maybe if
There is a,
Do we have
We're out of time. Tembo, did you just want to
very rapidly?
Yes, I just want.
last word?
I did on the life of the lithium-ion batteries. I think a lot of the operators we work with are incentivized to make sure that they reach a good standard and have extended life, and because afterwards, in order for them to have residual value in second life applications, if it's stationary storage, for mini grids or for backup power, there's an incentive for those cells to be, the health of those cells to be traceable over their lifetime in the locomotive application. So we see that a lot of operators are already incentivized to do so, and I think standards will only support that.
Okay.
actually, this is a new European manufacturer's practice to use the used car batteries for home storage facilities. Renault is doing that one. European car manufacturers are going into that direction.
I think we need to stop just to finish on that. So I just have the quote of Einstein: life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. So thank you, dear panelists. So thank you for your contribution, and a round of applause for our